Now, one of the most important and least understood roles of the Holy Spirit is for her to communicate the will of God. You know, and all those things that Jesus said, that he said she would remind us of, including the things that weren't written down, and the things that were hidden, and the things that weren't considered canon. If you very seldom or never hear the whispers of the Holy Spirit, or feel her nudges, then you're missing out on one of the greatest blessings of your heritage as a child of God. Because believe me, it's happening, you're just not aware. It's been my experience. So you're also missing out on one of the greatest spiritual warfare tools, an instant message from headquarters on what should be important to you. The Holy Spirit provides a channel for God's communications to us. She wants us to be more like Jesus, and that would be our Father's will as well. You see, by examining Jesus' own patterns after he received the Spirit, how he got closer. And the question is, did he pray and meditate in his communication? Do we really know how Jesus did it? He was always going away to pray and listen to his Father. The listening was a vital part in Jesus' life, one that demonstrated to the disciples a pattern for them to follow. Luke's gospel seems to focus on this idea. And here's a few verses. At daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. He took Peter, John, and James with him, and he went up into the mountain to pray. One day, Jesus was praying in a certain place, and when he finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us how to pray, just as John taught his disciples." But now Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." And he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down, and prayed. It had to be difficult for Jesus to pray alone, to get away from the people who are demanding things from him. But he does make the effort. Notice, he doesn't necessarily exclude his disciples from these times of prayer. By example, he is teaching them how to seek our Father. It seemed that when Jesus prayed, he often did so on his own, in very secluded places, and for many hours on end. Here's a couple more examples from a couple more Gospels. Now in Mark, next morning he got up and went out. He went away to a lonely spot and remained there in prayer. And from Matthew and Mark, Jesus made the disciples embark and go ahead on to the other side while he sent the people away. And after doing that, he went up to the hillside to pray alone. It grew late, and he was there by himself. So what Jesus doing in these lonely places for hours on end? We think something else was going on here besides just ordinary prayer. And it seems obvious. What the Gospels are referring to as prayer is not what we commonly think of as prayer. In fact, that Jesus often prayed alone should not surprise us. Throughout his ministry, Jesus often instructed people he had healed not to speak about what he had done, and in the Sermon on the Mount instructs us to pray alone, by ourselves, in secret. Now here in the West, we associate meditation with Eastern traditions such as Hinduism and Buddhism. But does that matter? Really, what does that matter? Do you think it mattered to Jesus? Did he meditate for instruction? Well, we think he did. Or his version of praying was very different from what the common notion of prayer is today. His method involving being alone in silence and for extended periods of time, and that sounds to us very much like meditation in the Spirit. We need to be doing it, Jesus style.